Welcome to this live recording of the Nursing Home Podcast, the podcast that you go to listen and to understand the nuances of the nursing home industry. In this episode, we have with us Ryan Gallia. Ryan is the CEO of VoiceFriend, a company that I've used personally as a nursing home administrator, and I'm very curious to hear where that company is today. But even before that, we're going to talk about some of the issues and some of the problems as they affect the nursing home space. First of all, Ryan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, thanks for making some time for us. So, before we get started, I know that our listeners know who I am a little bit. They don't know you yet. Can you give us the short version of how you got to doing what you're doing today?
Absolutely. As you mentioned, VoiceFriend has been around for a period of time. My background was in investing, mainly in the private equity space. With my start in healthcare, we would acquire businesses and help grow them over time. A couple of years ago, there was an incident in the family that led me to kind of reevaluate my priorities and lead me to make the decision to go out and launch my own investment vehicle or business. And instead of building from scratch, given my experience working with businesses that already had a footprint, I decided to go out and actually buy a small business from a owner who was looking to retire. I focused on the post-acute space specifically, and we can get into why later, and acquired VoiceFriend back in August of last year.
Oh, well, so relatively new.
Very new.
Very new to the company. So, okay, fascinating. So you went in, you decided you needed to buy a business. Okay, let's continue down this path just for a minute, because you can buy any business in the world. This is not a business. Was there a personal connection between you and this business, or was this a business that you decided is the right business, or both?
A bit of both. So I wanted to buy something in the post-acute space.
Okay.
I knew that I wanted to buy a software company. The
Okay.
motivation for doing this in the first place was that I had a grandparent who was really sick, and she was quite young actually, and she had poor treatment experience in rehab post getting surgery done, and so she ultimately passed, and that made me realize you should really spend your time doing what you want to do, but it also made me realize that there's a lot of issues in the post-acute space that need to be addressed. And so I actually searched for over a year to find a software company in the space and got close with a few, but ultimately landed on VoiceFriend, where I felt there was just a lot of potential and optionality. I thought it had a good foundation. It was more of a canvas that I could paint and build, rather than buying a more established business like an electronic health record where there's not many places you could take that.
And as opposed to trying to start something from scratch, unproven concept, and spending years beta testing something which may or may not get anywhere, spending other people's money to see if your ideas make any sense. So you're taking something in the middle, which I kind of like.
Exactly. And my background was in buying businesses, so it kind of fit what I had been doing at a professional level prior to this.
Okay, so you have the skills and experience to analyze a business and to see. I mean, this is what you've done with other people's money. So now, for a chance, you can do it yourself,
Yeah.
and you can get the reward that you were bringing to your clients. Okay, so interesting. So post-acute care space is on purpose. Software. I guess you wanted a software company. I mean, you could have bought a nursing home if you wanted to. You could have done anything, but I guess you like software. Fair
Yeah,
assumption.
that I've been programming since I was 8 years old, and I've always been a big software guy. Did a minor in machine learning, and so wanted to marry my interests, and this seemed like the perfect combination.
Okay, very interesting. Okay, so let's talk about some of the challenges that can exist for someone before they bring in any solution, whether it's yours or a different one. What is the problem primarily that this is addressing?
It's primarily a communication problem, and that problem exists between the facility and various stakeholders, those being staff, family, residents, and referral sources.
Hmm.
Um, Family members want to stay informed about their loved ones. They need to be updated quickly in case of an emergency. Um, you know, Residents have varying needs depending on their acuity level. Um, in certain situations, an individual might have Alzheimer's and require frequent reminders of it's mealtime. So in that sense, and then on the staffing side, I mean, I think we all know there's a big shortage, and so finding ways to automate communication processes that they're doing every day uh, leads to more efficiency, getting more out of fewer people, which is really, I think, the only way at this point that we're going to solve that issue.
Okay, so from a problem standpoint, challenges that exist in the nursing home that they are specifically targeting is so communication with the staff, that I understand, and for anyone who's tried to schedule even pre-COVID when people actually wanted to work and you didn't have to beg them to show up and pay them more money than you're making just so that they can take care of the residents. Um, so we understand that there's a ton of texting, calling, reminding, all of those types of things, which can take up quite a bit of time. And even whatever the method is, doesn't matter if you put a message in a bottle and you send it out. But that's definitely a big piece. What about, you mentioned communication with the residents? So I mean, usually this is all, it's an in business, right? You can't provide care for the elderly remotely for the most part. So what does that mean? Many of them are not tech savvy, and what are you alluding to there?
Yeah, and that's why I think um, having a solution where you meet the recipient at their technology level is super important. So we can send messages to phone, text, email, Amazon Alexa. So it doesn't necessarily matter if they're not tech savvy. They know how to answer the phone, and so they can get that communication directly to their phone. So if you want to use it for wellness and safety check-ins, say there's an incident and you want to know quickly where is everybody in my facility, you can have a call placed to the rooms for everybody and have them answer and click one to indicate that they're safe and there's no issue. If there is an issue, let the system alert the correct person to go in and check on that person physically.
Hmm. In real time. Okay, I'm just trying to understand that a bit, but you're saying they're going straight. Well, many nursing homes don't have phones in every room, right? Like sometimes the long-term residents won't have phones unless they have their own cell phones. Short-term might have some have for everybody, but at least for where they have, then you could use it that way. But as far as the challenge is concerned, so what let's say there's an incident, let's say there's a fire, God forbid, or something, some major incident going on in the building. You need to know quickly where everybody is. So every nursing home has a red book or something on all the nurses station that's going to say, this is what we do in the case of emergency. Obviously, if there's an emergency, nobody opens it up. Everybody panics unless they're really well trained. Um, but it can be used as a reference. And one of the things, obviously, is taking account. Let's say our fire drill. That's a good example, right? So it's
Yeah.
done frequently, and everybody knows where to go. They know the doors are going to close. They know where to meet. And there's a count that happens manually with the paper, and then it can happen quite quickly. Now, is it 100% accurate? I don't know. But that definitely is a challenge. What happens if you miss somebody? You get
And there's
in a
also
real.
the family
Go
element
ahead,
to it, right? They need to be notified. And so, I spoke to nursing home administrators who would track in Excel who the correct contact is for this type of incident in the family, and then they would go through and manually make those phone calls to everybody. And then rather than doing that, you have the message pre-built. So when that emergency comes, you just click a button and it goes to the preferred communication channel for each family member and resident.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, what about as far as improving? I'm just looking here at some of the things. As far as improving the quality of the care. Obviously, I understand that as far as um, letting people know if something happened or being in touch with um, the quality ratings. So, is there a way that this type of communication can improve the quality ratings, which is obviously very important to every nursing home operator?
Yeah, and I'll give it a interesting and exciting example of something that just came out recently, and that's managing patient discharge from the skilled nursing facility. Um,
Okay.
there's several issues that factor into there. One is your readmission rate from post discharge to a hospital will factor into your quality rating. There's also a penalty if your rate is too high. What's factored into a formula that gets to that, and then there's
Mhm.
bonuses on your reimbursements if you are, in the top quartile. I don't know what the exact area is.
Mhm.
And so we manage the cadence of follow up. So a person's discharged to the home, it's now on the facility to keep track of all these individuals, follow up, make sure they're okay to prevent them from being readmitted. We have a cadence that you can set yourself over the first 30 days where the individual will get an automated phone call, for example, on the first day, or the family member might get an automated phone call, and there will be a survey asking how's your appetite today, how are you feeling, and you can respond to that electronically. It'll record those responses and then flag them if there's anything concerning to have a nurse reach out. Along that 30-day cadence, there'll also be steps in there where it'll create a task for a nurse or social worker to actually reach out manually. Um, and so over the cadence of that 30 days, it's small things that ultimately get people readmitted. They don't have access to food. You can get them Meals on Wheels or something along those lines. They might feel a pain that they think is unrelated to why they were in the facility in the first place, but it could be an early sign of something, and you can catch it with a program like this and keep them out. Another thing too is obviously if you do catch it, they can be readmitted to your SNF, your skilled nursing facility, within that 30-day window, and it counts as the same qualifying stay. They don't need to go to the hospital again. And so it's a good way to also keep the bed filled if you need it to be filled. The person needs to be taken care of. They don't have to go through the whole system again and add up costs. And so overall, in doing that, it improves not only the facility's rating and the referrals that they're going to get from hospital systems, but it also significantly improves the quality of care that person's getting by just reducing those small chances of incidents going under the radar and then being readmitted.
Right. So I know that, like you mentioned, the spreadsheets. I know that many people have sat and made these calls manually, and the post discharge follow ups, and many times it's also done uh, by a highly compensated employee, which means that besides the fact that it's done manually, and obviously that means that when there's other things going on in the building, this is something that's going to be neglected. It's expensive to be done, and even if the calls are happening and they're being shared, or they're being documented in some sort of shared spreadsheet, um, is the social worker being notified when they hear that there's no food in the house because they were supposed to go home with their daughter and the daughter said that she had enough and ran away to who knows where, and now the elderly senior is there by themselves. um, like you said, it's very simple things that can end them back in the hospital, and besides for the financial implications and the for the facility, just going to the hospital and exposing themselves to everything else that's there. I mean,
Yeah.
COVID is an obvious example, but even without that, a hospital is a place where sick people, very sick people go. The sickest people go there. And you take someone who's from the most vulnerable and put them in a place where the most sick people are. it's never the best idea. If you can
Yep.
avoid it, obviously the best thing would be to get them back in. And ultimately, what's going to happen is they're going to, if they need to go back, they may end up staying, for an extended period of time just so that they could qualify, because the hospital doesn't want to be stuck with them either. So they
Yeah.
could just be sitting there languishing away while they could have gone right back to the bed that was might still be waiting for them, and continue with the care, right away. So, but that's a process that also you're basically throwing technology at some of the antiquated processes of what goes on in a typical nursing home. And this is like a good nursing home because this is high tech. We're using a spreadsheet. It's not a notepad, right? It's not a stone tablet that we're chiseling out this information and then using smoke signals to get it across the facility. This is we're using a spreadsheet, and we even know how to share a spreadsheet. Um, yeah, but there's still big pieces that are missing, and big pieces of the automation that are missing. And most importantly, I love a statement from Steve Jobs. I mean, I'll post a link to this in the show notes, um, where someone challenged him in one of his, and I don't know which product it was that he was introducing, and they were asking him like, "What do you specifically know about Java? Something, some nerdy
Yeah.
technicality? And tell us specifically about the work that you've done for this product." And obviously, a techie in the audience asked this question. So I'm not going to tell you the whole thing, although I think I remember it word for word because I love it.
Yeah.
Um, you can please some of the people some of the time, and then he let it go. But his
Yeah.
point was that what he said is that the problem with what this guy said is that he's right. I don't know everything that goes on in here. But in his rebuttal, he said something that is genius. And I think, unfortunately, some technology companies don't get. And he said, we don't start with our engineers and figure out what's the best technology that we can create, and then go back to our customers and to them. I said, we start the other way around. We said, what is the best result we can create for our customers? What is the absolutely best thing, the best experience we can give them? Then we go back to our engineers and say, make that happen. Imagine having, I think it was the iPod was 1,000 songs in your pocket or something like that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Right. So now that sounds so stupid. I could have in a micro SD card, I could have a billion movies, right? That was like a thing. Like imagine such a thing. That was like earth shattering. That was how many tapes records could you fit in your pocket, or even CDs
Yeah.
take up a lot of space. So it's like, all right, geeks, nerds, figure this out. I don't know how, figure it out. We want a tiny computer that's going to be able to fold up and still be just as strong and powerful, as a big, tower computer. Make that happen. So
Yeah.
I've just seen. I'm sure you've seen this. This everyone throws software at nursing homes. Maybe they throw software in other industries too. But I feel like for some reason, nursing homes are targeted. They're so big, and it's such a big market, and they're so behind in technology that everyone throws software at nursing homes. And perhaps you've looked at other products, other businesses to buy before you chose this one. Um, but few, and many of them solve interesting problems. But what's most important, is to make sure that we're starting with the result, and then figuring out how to use the technology for it. So, like the result, we want to make sure this patient. I'm sorry for going off on a rant here a little.
No,
Uh,
that's good.
want to make sure that this patient ends up, if they're home and they need to get back to the hospital, they need to get back to the nursing home. We want to make sure that we find out about it, that it happens right away, that we know about it, they know about it, the family members know about it. And we want us to stay focused on that, and ultimately that will make the product, the most successful when it's done that way. It's a great clip. I'll
Yeah,
definitely
I
put
know
it.
the exact one you're referencing. I
Oh,
couldn't
you know what
remember
I'm
the
talking
either, though. I was going to jump in, but I couldn't remember it, so I'm just not going to do it justice. But I mean, that's exactly it. The customers basically designed this product themselves. We worked with several facilities, and we just kind of watched them and talked to them and asked them what would make their lives easier, and then built it and trialed it with them and through a lot of iterations. But as you said, non-engineering led. We had simple tools that we explained them to them and let them kind of decide and design how they could be used to automate and speed up and become more efficient.
Yeah, I mean, on the other side of the spectrum, you also have what they say about Henry Ford, that if they would have asked him what to create, they would have asked for a faster horse. So, like,
That's
sometimes you
true.
have
So
to
you got to take it
consider,
with a grain of salt. You got to,
right?
yeah, you got to. It's more about figuring out the exact problems that they want fixed, and making sure you understand those correctly, and then working on how the engineers work on the solution.
Exactly. Right. So I mean that would fit actually for the case of the faster horse, because at the end of the day they wanted speed, they wanted efficiency, reliability, not have to deal with some of the challenges of having an animal, and whatever else was involved there. I don't recall. It's been a little bit before my days when that stuff happened. But nursing homes are not too far behind in many of these areas. So I mean, that really is amazing. Maybe tell us a little bit more about, um, or maybe what is the one feature that you are most excited about that already exists within VoiceFriend, or maybe that's in development, something that you think is really exciting, new, innovative, that you would like to share with us today?
I We do have some exciting ones in the pipeline, but I don't want to. I don't think we're at the point where I could share them. I think a lot of people in the team would get pretty mad with me if I
Okay,
front
fair.
ran front ran them. For the existing platform, when I looked at buying it, the reason was that the core is phenomenal. It's really easy to use, and the grouping logic in the back end, which people don't really recognize how important that is, but the ability to make as many communication groups as possible and have those ready to go, and the ability to hit a button and have a message go to 1,000 people and have it go to the exact type of communication that they prefer, phone, text, email, whatever it is, in the span of 30 seconds. It's really phenomenal. That core technology is, I don't want to say anything about what we're working on next, but that you know the same, we're going to build on that same idea, but more of the kind of automating workflows without getting into too much, using that to automate.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. I'm not going to make you spill the beans. I don't want anyone to get into trouble here. Um, but the concept is to be able to instantly and almost effortlessly communicate, to exactly the right people and exactly the way that they prefer to be communicated with. Um, I assume you can respond to their responses. It probably depends
Yeah.
on the method of communication. I've seen a very old version of it, so I don't know what it looks like
Yeah.
today.
It's so we're on 2.0, but we're going to 3.0 right now. I've seen the version that you saw, and it is definitely quite dated,
Yeah,
to say
okay,
the least. But
your
yes,
words, not mine.
you reply.
Yeah.
You can even reply with images too. Um, Although we don't condone this, we did have one customer try to use us to collect COVID vaccine cards. Uh, so they sent out saying, "Hey, can we text in your COVID vaccine cards?" And they texted pictures of them. Not supposed to do that, but they,
Okay.
they did use it for that use case. That's one example.
Uh-huh. Why you're not supposed to do that? Because it's
It's
not
not
secure?
technically, yeah, it's not HIPAA compliant. You can't over the SMS. You could if it was over our data, because our platform's HIPAA compliant. But as soon as it goes onto the network, it's out of that kind of bubble of compliance.
Got it, got it. But they did what they needed to do.
They did what they needed
That
to do, and
sounds like.
can't
There
undo
was
it.
a software, I will tell you from my nursing scheduling days. It was considered new then, and it does go back a number of years, where you were able to text people about, are you able to pick up a shift, and you
Yep.
can see their response, but you can't respond to their response. You would have to actually pull out your phone or to call them or text them once you see that they responded. So it was good if you had open shift and you had an exact group of CNAs that pick up on Mondays, per diem or whatever. So you could quickly send them. Actually, it probably wasn't. You probably had to manually pick each person. But point is that it was something that was sold and appreciated, even though it was so primitive that you couldn't respond to their responses. You couldn't pick up the conversation. I would hope that it's different now.
Exactly. And that's exactly when I talk about workflow automation. It's okay, we communicated. Now, what do I do with that information? What's the next step? Taking that, filling the shift, for example, stuff along those lines where we're going with it. Because we don't want to be a tool. We want to be the core communication platform in the facility where everything goes through, where we link these disparate systems like your payroll system, your EHR, and so on.
Very interesting. That kind of just brought it together for me. You don't want to be a tool. You want to be a system. I'll tell you a hesitation that that someone can have, or maybe I used to have, when constantly being pitched new softwares for nursing homes, and everybody wants to be a point click care, or some sort of like core system. So because obviously if you're in, then you're in a good place. And a lot of them they solve too small of a portion of the problem to make them a core essential tool. And many times they may not be friendly to the other tools that we're already using, and they end up either becoming a nuisance or just getting rid of them completely. To create, you're not really replacing another tool, so you're trying to create something. You want to say that there's a lot of messy communication that currently exists within the nursing home, whether it's staff to staff, staff to residents, facility to people outside the facility, facility to other facilities, and it's happening in quite a haphazard fashion in multiple methods of communication. So basically, you want to create the communication hub where
The best breed communication hub. Yeah.
interesting, as opposed to the way it's been pitched in the past, and the reason why we've used it in the past was it helped the scheduler send out a lot of texts at the same time. So instead of
Yeah.
picking up your phone and doing one at a time and copying and pasting, so in the time it would take you to send out 30 texts, to send out one text, you sent out 30,
Yeah.
and whatever limitations it had after that. Instead of manually sending, or just the amount of time it took you to find the context, they're already there in the groups, like you said. Like that was from the core functionality. It was used mostly as a tool, and it was a tool for if a resident falls. We once got a tag for that somebody fell or some sort of incident happened. The person was supposed to be notified. They were not notified at all, or maybe they were notified after the time frame. And sometimes you don't want to notify them right away, right? So you're hoping that maybe it really wasn't a fall or whatever. But if you automate the process, it kind of takes out the human error or misjudgment factor, as long as the process is set up properly.
That's exactly right. And those use cases will always be part of the product. We don't want to obviously take away from the way people use it now, but I think going that extra step of now taking the communication and doing something with it is kind of where we want to head.
Okay, so I mean a few things. No, number one is that we're not just a tool; we're a hub. And number two is we're actually going to be part of doing the work and not just not just talking about doing the work. I guess some sort of a project management software or a Asana of sorts or something like that. Maybe
Yeah,
not that complex.
getting all the, because as you said, there's communication coming from every which
I'm gonna
way.
squeeze this thing out of you if it takes me an hour. No, I'm joking.
Yeah, I don't want to spoil anything because it does. It takes time to develop everything as we go.
Of course.
But
No, I get that.
yeah,
Well, let me answer another question. As far as facility physician communication, I know that I remember way back when Point Click Care actually had like a separate app for nurses communicating with physicians, and I am not up to date. I don't know if right now if there's a way of doing it within Point Click Care, but it's definitely a problem because a lot of it happens over text, whether it's supposed to happen or not. Doctors don't want to be called. Nobody likes to be called anymore. If you could text, right? Who likes to talk to people? But is there anything, and if there isn't, something to think
it's
about?
an interesting. Yeah. There isn't anything in the works for that. I'll say that, but this is interesting. I mean, we were thinking about getting involved with transitions of care, so the handoff part process, but this is actually an interesting application as well. Um, the idea is to build the core platform and then identify these other use cases that we haven't even thought of, and build what is needed for the facility to have that communication.
I'm just saying that if you're sticking to this concept, I love the concept of the communication hub, for the facility. That when you want to communicate with anyone, where it's always through this one central place. Even within, as administrator, you have a WhatsApp group with the marketing team. You have another WhatsApp group with this. You have a text group for the people who don't have WhatsApp. You have a Facebook group with these people. A lot of times you don't even know how to communicate with people because a lot of it's, you have to remember, this person has WhatsApp, this person doesn't, this person is in email, and that's just within like the management team sometimes. And also
Yeah,
have to remember that there's other levels of communication. There's regionals, there's the owners, there's people who have access to only certain facilities. So if you're sticking to the vision of the communication hub, I would say that physician to facility communication could be critical. Transitions of care maybe doesn't fit into that. I'm just giving my 2 cents here. There's a lot of companies that do that already.
yeah,
So, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying you should or shouldn't do it. I guess, yeah, it's communication, facility to facilities. I guess that could fit there too. You're saying if you want to communicate, like for example, the admissions process, right? So every time they get a referral, that that
yeah,
that's a big antiquated process. That's a bit more complex than just emailing and texting because you have all the documentation that's going back and forth. Um, there's a lot of competition in that space. I'm just thinking. I know of a whole
yeah.
bunch, few companies I'm thinking of right now that work there, and some of them only do that. And then you also get into issues with integrating with the HR platforms and things like that.
That's where we're really strong. Our integrations are phenomenal. We have a two-way with point-click care. So like for the patient discharge, those survey results will be pushed into the person's chart.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's
Interesting.
our big
Okay.
thing. We've been really big on the integrations because we want to be that layer on top of all the platforms to centralize that communication. So these deep integrations are important.
Okay. Very interesting.
Yeah,
Okay. I'm excited to see where this is going to go. It's for me, it's personally interesting because, like I said, I've used them as a antiquated tool, but a tool that worked nonetheless. Maybe then it was somewhat advanced. And then I'm actually excited to see that you're in here and taking it, really to the next level. And it sounds like you're ready up to 3.0 is on the horizon. Before we let you go, I didn't realize how long this is going. Just having a good time here.
good.
Before
Yeah,
we let you go, anything in particular that you would want to leave off with our listeners in regards to Voice Friend? Um, any final words about that, and then we'll let them know where to learn more about you and the company.
absolutely. I think the one thing I'll say, and getting back to the message when you're talking about Steve Jobs and all that, is that we're building the product for the nursing homes. We're not building it for ourselves. And so we can create a solution. You just need to tell us the problems around communication. And so anyone who has anything that they think is great, come to us and we'll automate it. That's our goal, is to make your lives easier and solve a lot of this staffing shortage issue.
Okay, amazing, amazing, very interesting, very fascinating. Um, you're touching on staffing, and I can't not respond to that as being that I work for and manage quality a recruitment company for nursing homes. I have to jump in there. How specifically does this help for staffing and recruitment?
So right now, in the current form, the
Mhm.
main points is just communication with potential applicants, using the module. So you could schedule messages to send to them, send them updates on the application process, how that's proceeding. Staff, the main use cases are, for compliance, keeping track of when their certifications are coming up and notifying them automatically. The staff open shift call out, meeting scheduling, general updates and alerts,
That that part I get, but people who don't yet work for the facility, yet like, are you integrating with like job boards and becoming an ATS as well, or is it just once you already have them, it's you just focusing on the communication piece?
Yeah, we don't want to become an applicant tracking system. That's not our goal. You know, people do use us kind of like that already in a sense,
Mm-hmm.
but you know, we're much more interested once you get the person there. I mean, it's a problem to tackle. I'm not saying maybe down the road, but right now that's not necessarily on our horizon. Although the product has been used for that use case.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right, we just want the vision to be clear because jack of all trades, master of none, right? So you
Yeah,
want because a lot of things can be called communication, but that might not be primarily what it is. Um, okay, very interesting, very fast. I'm very curious to see just if someone wants to go. Let's say I want to go to the website and I want to see what it looks like. Is there any video there or anything like or a screenshot that I'd be able to see what it looks like?
yeah. We're doing a redesign right now, so I'm just trying to think where things are. There should be videos on there. If not, we have a Vimeo page.
Got
Uh,
it.
and they can all be accessed there. We also do live demos, so you can book that directly through the website pretty easily. And we're always happy if you're just even curious to see what it looks like to show you it.
Amazing, amazing. No, I do see it now, and it is definitely a completely different website since last time I looked at it. Amazing. Listen, Ryan, it's been great having you on the Nursing Home Podcast. It's fascinating to kind of check in again and see where Voice Friend is up to.
Yeah.
I'm glad to see that some of the things that you're doing. So if people want to learn more, they go to Voice Friend. I'm just looking at the website right now. Is it voicefriend.net?
Voicefriend.net, not .com.net, unfortunately.
Okay. You can buy.com. Okay, we'll talk about that a different time. Voicefriend.net is where you'll go to learn more information. Ryan, you've been a fabulous guest. I really enjoyed chatting with you today. And for those who are watching on Facebook, if you're watching on LinkedIn, thank you for joining. And head on over to voicefriend.net to learn more about this. To listen to this podcast or any of the past and future podcasts, you can head on over to the nursinghomepodcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts. All right. Thank you, Ryan. It's really been a
Thank you so
pleasure.
much for having me.